Excuse me, sir. Is the Earth round or flat?
Flat.
Why do you say that?
Because of the firmament.
What's the firmament?
Do you even read the Bible, bro?
What up, what up? You are now listening to Once Upon a 785, the dopest podcast in the Midwest. I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's get into it, bitch. What up, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon a 785. Today's date is December 1st, 2024. As always, I'm your host, Georgie350. This is episode 23, and I was actually a guest on the Flat Earth Files with George Hobbs. So this is a little swap cast. I'm very thankful for George and both his podcasts, the Flat Earth Files and the Fact Hunter, because he's honestly the reason I got into Flat Earth to begin with. So it was such a great experience being on his show, and if you haven't, you should definitely check out both his podcasts. But as always, before we start, let's do some quick announcements. I'm going to start first by plugging my TikTok, at Georgie350. Come hang out with me when I go live and check out all my videos. I'm getting some of my videos shadow banned, and I'm getting some of my videos taken off because they say I'm violating the community guidelines, which is insane because I come with all the receipts to prove what I'm talking about is true. So it's just a wild time that we live in. So come support me on TikTok. Moving on, you already know I have 3 places you can go and get some dope clothing, and you not only support me, but you help support them too. First is habits365.com and use promo code Georgie350 to get 15% off your order. Next, you can go to reaperapparelco.com and use promo code Georgie350 and get 10% off your order. And last but not least, you can go to cocobury.com for your premium sweatsuits. You can get them all different colors, and you guessed it, use promo code Georgie350 to get 30% off your order. Also, check out the Flat Earth Sun and Moon Clock app in the App Store, but make sure you use my referral link or use code Georgie so they know who sent you. This episode is audio only, so no video this week. But if you would like to watch the video version of most of the podcast episodes instead of just hearing it, I now have 2 options. First, for $5 a month, you can go to patreon.com/onceupon785. You'll get the episode before everyone else. I'll do shoutouts, plus I'm going to be doing some Patreon exclusive episodes. Or if you use Spotify, you can just sign up for my premium subscription straight through the app for $4.99 to get the video version. Also, questions, comments, or if you want to come on the show, you can email me at onceupon785@proton.me. That's M as in Mary, E as in everybody. Lastly, if you want to support me and you enjoy the show, do me a favor and leave a rating or a review, or just share the episode with someone who you think might find it interesting. I appreciate it greatly, because any way you can support me helps me get closer to being able to hopefully do this full time someday. And now, let's get into today's episode with me on the Flat Earth Files. Enjoy.
The following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
On the sky, do you feel the pull, questioning why? The stories told and left behind in shadows where the truth we find. They build their tales on graphs and lines, on theories they stake their design. But down here on
Welcome back, truth seekers from around the world. It's time for another edition of the Flat Earth Files podcast. I'm your host, as always, George Hobbs. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We have a great guest standing by. His name is Jordan. Before we get to him, just a couple of quick reminders. First, do stop by theflatearthfiles.com. Every episode goes out in the form of a blog post, and all the notes and things that we talked about during our conversation will be there. Including Jordan's email and his podcast link there and in the show notes. And at the website, you can always check out our forum, our chat room. There's much to do, theflatearthfiles.com. And if you would like to join the podcast like Jordan is today, please send us an email. It is fefilesguest@gmail.com. And again, all this information is in the show notes and the website. And without any further ado, let's bring on our guest. Again, his name is Jordan from Kansas. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
Yeah, it is good to see you. And this is our second. The technology monsters got us the first go around, but I think we're good to go now. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
All right. My name's Jordan. I'm 34 from Kansas. I have 3 kids. I got 11-year-old daughter, 7-year-old son, and a 5-year-old daughter. I'm from a small town in Kansas. It's got like 90 people. We have 11 roads. Only one of them's paved. The rest of them are dirt. I've been a welder for 13 years. Currently I work at a company that they work on a bunch of stuff for the oil industry. We make like ASME pressure vessels. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I just checked out your town on Google. You got the big, I guess that's the water tower. It's silver. It says Collier on it, and there's maybe like a firehouse and a post office. And you know what? I live in what is considered a rural town, but nothing like, these real small towns are becoming farther and fewer between.
Oh yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, because growing up here, we didn't have anything to do except. There was a lot more kids when I was a kid.
Yeah. Has it always been, this amount of people, always around 100?
I mean, yeah, since I moved here in 3rd grade, and there's never been really over 100 people probably.
Wow. And what's the nearest city to you?
Like city would probably be Wichita, Kansas. But if we want to get like groceries, we can go like 45 minutes to Hayes.
Oh, so you were really no Dollar General or anything there, huh?
Oh, we have, we have Dollar General 8 miles away, and then another one 12 miles away.
Okay, but still, you're out there. We're living large now. We used to have to go the same, about 6 miles to go to the Dollar General, and just a month ago they put one in our little area. So it's like we're living large now. We'd only have to drive a minute now if we need a milk or something like that.
And you know what's crazy? You say that you live by the Amish.
Yep.
Here we have what's called they're Old German Baptists, and then we have like the Duncan Brethren, and they have like no radios, no TVs, just house phones, and it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Ohio has a group like that. Pennsylvania, Delaware. And I wasn't aware there was, what was the German group? Were they Mennonites or are they something different?
The Old German Baptists.
Old German Baptist. Okay. Interesting.
A lot of them moved to Ohio.
Oh, I believe that. There's such a huge, I think that's probably the biggest gathering of Amish in the country is in Ohio. Great stuff. Why don't we get started? Well, first of all, I wanted to ask you, your podcast is entitled Once Upon a Time 785, and I was wondering what the 785 was. So I went to our friend Google, and is it what they say is that number symbolizes a sign of a fresh start?
It's actually like our area code. Oh, like so 785, and then
I've read too much into it. Okay, gotcha.
It was originally just the Once Upon a 785, but after I found out that the Earth was flat, I changed it to that because I wanted it to, with the algorithms and stuff, I wanted it to bring it up better.
So if I recall correctly, in our emails, your podcast was originally I guess your awakening happened during your podcast. It didn't happen and then you started it. So you kind of altered your podcast.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, I completely switched what it was about and everything.
So tell the listeners a little bit about how your awakening came about and how it affected your life and to whom you are now today as a person.
All right, I can, because do you want me to start like where how I got into conspiracies?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like the first thing that ever got me into conspiracies was a movie called Zeitgeist. And that it blew my mind. And it was actually like a double, I grew up in the church, like my parents, I had to go to church every Sunday. And as a kid, it kind of made me really resent church. Like I couldn't wait to just not have to go to church if I didn't want to. And then that movie Zeitgeist, they have the first parts about religion and they based it all off the stars. And that's what made me be like, I started to not really believe in the Bible or God or anything. It wasn't a priority to me. But then they had the 9/11 part and that blew my mind. And that was the first bit of I don't trust the government or anything they say, but that was in 2008 when I watched that. And I can say I honestly didn't mess with conspiracies until 2021. And I didn't even like podcasts until I made my own. And then I started listening to podcasts.
It's interesting if I could jump in real quick. So Zeitgeist 9/11 was your first real awakening. So doing the math, you would have been about 11 when 9/11 actually happened in 2001?
Yep.
And
I think 6th grade.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. And, at that age, you're not thinking, wow, that's falling at free fall speed and it's weird. You're not doing that type of thinking. So you fast forward 17, you're like a senior in high school and you see Zeitgeist. And, even though you're only 18, you're still, your mind has been molded to believe that the government is looking out for you. And then you watch this movie and it probably turned your world upside down to be introduced to this at 18.
It completely did. I would be lying if I didn't say I didn't watch that movie every night for that whole week because I just couldn't believe it. I didn't know about Building 7 or anything. And then I was just like, God, there's no way that happened.
Yeah. And again, I always say if you were to stand outside of Walmart and ask just 100 people walking in how many buildings fell in New York City on 9/11, 95% of them would say 2. You'd be lucky enough to find a couple of critical thinkers who have done a little bit of research and came across Zeitgeist or some quote unquote conspiracy, whether it be a video or a pamphlet or something. But again, it's very difficult, and I'm sure you understand too that it's difficult to get people to question these type of things, to even get them to sit down for 5 minutes and to look into them.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly really, really difficult because I started asking people if they knew how far away the sun was, and they're like, no. And I ask them if they think the Earth's round or flat, and they're just round. And I just ask them why, and they always say, I don't know. And I just find it weird why you wouldn't want to just, because if you tell them the facts, they're going to say, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. And it's just, I don't like that answer at all.
Yeah, it is a little demeaning. They kind of talk down to you, oh, you've been watching too many YouTube videos. That's the comment I get a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So where do you go from 9/11? What was the kind of next rabbit hole you ran into?
I'd say it was when I started listening to podcasts in 2021. I listened to these podcasts. One of them was Theories of the Third Kind, and they had an episode about Antarctica. And I was like, what do you mean you can't go to Antarctica? That blew my mind because I was way older now. And I was like, what do you mean we can't go there? And so I started looking into it and I was like, man, that's crazy. How can you not be allowed to go there, but I still was not even close to the Earth being flat. And I'd listened to some other episodes that people had with flat earthers, but I'm pretty sure one of them was part of the Flat Earth Society. And I was like, I don't know about that. But they would say certain things like why you don't see telephone poles or skyscrapers like angled and stuff, or like zooming in on Australia and showing us someone swimming upside down. I was like, that makes sense. And I did have one thing I wanted to ask you real quick that I always thought it as a little kid, and I wondered like if it, like how it could make sense. Like, how they show the globe, and I always thought as a kid, if you started digging a hole where you were at, you could eventually come out on the other side.
Right.
But how would that work with gravity? Because they're stuck to the ball upside down, and I'd be coming from the other side. But then they'd probably just say there's magma.
Yeah, exactly. But there is I guess it was a meme, whatever you call it. Or maybe a previous guest at some point mentioned it. If you, if you were to, it's not possible, obviously, but if you were to dig a hole going in face down, you're not going to come out the same way. There's just so many fallacies with the globe. Between the flights and everything else. And it goes back to what you said. You ask somebody how far away is the sun, they can't answer it. How fast? One thing most people can answer, they can't answer usually how fast is the Earth spinning. They usually get pretty close to that. But anything else, moon numbers, 239,000, how fast we're chasing the sun, 66,000, those type of things they can't really grasp onto. So for me, going back to what your question was, what you had mentioned, scientism, or whatever word you want to use for that, and it's obviously controlled, and their job is to fill in the blanks, to have an answer for everything. Because if you follow Christ and you read the Bible, you understand that there's a lot of answers for things, right? That we do live on a flat plane, that we are encased by the firmament.
Yeah.
But science has to have answers for everything else, right? And they come up with this nonsense, like they can tell you what's at the center of the Earth, which there's not really if we're on a foundation, right? And I think the deepest hole is like 7.5 or 8 miles. And it goes the same with medicine, right? Well, God didn't make you perfect. So, 5 minutes into childbirth, they load up children with vaccines and all of these type of things. So, these things, these deceptions are just much bigger than money and power. It's really a spiritual battle.
It is. And I mean, I was just talking to my sister today, and she was just like, I don't know how you can get so into this. She's like, I almost don't even want to know. And I was like, I feel like a lot of people, they'd rather just not hear it because it's going to just flip their whole world upside down. And I said, I just scratched everything I ever learned and just started fresh. And I don't know that much, but I have beliefs, and I feel like they're a lot more solid than what I learned in a 12-year indoctrination school.
And that is one of the things that you battle when you talk to people, is the indoctrination. And in many cases, not all, but many of the colleges, they even indoctrinate you even more. I just finished an interview about 15 minutes of you coming on, and we were talking about, if you take some time and you go on these major colleges' websites, like every major college has their own newspaper, like go to the University of Oregon's website, the University of Texas, and you look at the propaganda and how they are molding these young adults. Well, actually, they're adults when they get to college, so they're adults, but they're young, and they're really pushing this. For one, in an earthly word, it's communist, but in a spiritual world, it's Satanist, and they're teaching everything that goes against biblical teachings.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I had always heard that, I thought they said that dinosaur fossils was where oil came from.
Right, fossil
fuels. But I made a video on TikTok last night, and I went to the old Google, and Google said that that's fiction. Like, that's not true. They're from these microorganisms. And I was like, well, I feel like I learned that in school. And I wondered how come some of the dinosaurs turned into oil and then some turned into fossils, because that makes no sense.
Yeah, that's another lie. And personally, I believe it's probably renewable. If obviously you drain an oil field, you leave it alone for 20, 30 years, it probably renews itself. You can't tell me that Saudi Arabia has been milking that land for, for at least, and I'm just guessing here, 80 years, and they still have loads of that stuff. And I've talked to individuals who have worked in the oil industry and said that it's renewable, not overnight, not like a plant where you can drop a seed and no one comes, but over time it will. Yeah, if you ask Google, it says fossil fuels are non-renewable energy sources that were formed from the remains of prehistoric plants and animals.
Yeah, and I was literally talking to my parents like 30 minutes ago, and I said, I think that oil's just as renewable and abundant as water is.
Indeed.
And I heard from you that like Rockefeller's the one who made the word fossil fuel so they could make it seem like it's scarce, so they can raise and lower the price. And if they could do something to make a buck, I feel like they totally will.
Oh, 100%. And then you can even go back to Tesla. I believe he created free energy, and you can't have free energy because they have to. The whole system of the Matrix is meant to deplete people and make you work harder and harder, so that keeps you away from your family, because you have Johnny off at school, and instead of being there and educating them yourself, you have to work 50, 60 hours a week to pay the electric bill, to pay for the gas bill. And listen, If it turns out, if word gets out that oil is renewable and they're lying about it, well, sure, they can charge for it, but they can't charge like they are now. They could charge for like water, 25 cents a gallon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally true. And I mean, there's so much stuff just listening to you that I've just like, it makes so much more sense now. Like, I don't know. It was kind of depressing to be like, man, I can't believe I thought I knew conspiracies and I had no clue. And even conspiracies, that's a word they made to make people seem like they don't know what they're talking about.
That's right. That crazy George, he's a conspiracy theorist. The FBI put that in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
So now I guess in an order of precedence here, you would have come upon Flat Earth during COVID. Have you had, or I should say, did you have any kind of questions when this was going on in March and going forward in 2020 prior to coming upon the Flat Earth?
What? I don't know if you need to put a mark there. Someone was trying to call me, and I just denied him.
Oh, no, you're good. It didn't come through.
Okay. Well, like with COVID, I had actually just lost my job before COVID happened. And so that whole year of 2020, I was unemployed. And I definitely knew that COVID was a scam, and I didn't get no vaccine. I didn't do anything like that. And I tried to get everybody I knew not to get the vaccine, but I just didn't do that because I didn't trust the government ever since 9/11, like flu shots. I didn't get those. I didn't need them.
Good stuff. And then when you actually came upon Flat Earth, was there a one piece of information, whether it be a YouTube video or something, where it really hit home and you understood that, man, this, I've been lied to?
Yeah, actually, the craziest thing was I started making videos on this one app called, I can't even remember what it was, but I was like, I'm starting to think that maybe the earth might be flat, but I said, but I still definitely know that God and Jesus aren't real. And then I was at work one day and something happened, and I tapped my headphones and a podcast came on, and it was Why the Lie of the Flat Earth Files. And I was like, what is this? I was like, I almost skipped it because you were quoting the Bible, but then you started saying firmament. And I was like, what is this word firmament? Because out of all the years I had to go to church, I know the Bible. I mean, And I was like, I've never heard this word before. And you were like, it's in Genesis, page 1. And I just, as soon as I got off work that day, I went to my parents' house to get my son, and I asked if they had a King James Bible, and they got me my grandpa's one out. And I was like, oh man, there it is, page right on Genesis, firmament. And I was like, that's when it clicked. And I was like, wow, the earth is flat and God is real. I was like, man, because it blew my mind. And anybody that knows me knows that I never really cared about religion or anything. And now I feel like it's pretty important that you got to know that God is there, and we have a firmament, and you look outside, the earth definitely not spinning. I try to show them pictures from that flat earth, David Weiss's app of like the sun and all the planets are spinning around. And I'm like, how come we've never ran into another galaxy when they say there's all these other planets? We've never had anything hit us. The meteors almost come, but then they don't.
Yeah, those are all great points. And Dave's app is so awesome. Every single day you get a new nugget, and it's only a couple minutes, but it reinforces. And it is very helpful. I've been able to, if somebody asks me a question, I can put it in the search bar and find a video that explains it much better than, maybe I can. And it's easy to gift. I think it's $3, and I've gifted it to many people. Some people have used it. Some people have not. And for $3, whatever. But it is life-changing. And that's awesome to hear that it's just random. You were on Spotify and you weren't even searching flat earth stuff. It just popped on.
Yeah. I mean, I try to put a bunch of them in my queue, and if I double tap it, it'll like skip forward, and it made like a special like ding. And then I don't know, it was probably divine intervention, and it just came on because God was probably like, I'm not going to let you believe in flat earth and not me. And I mean, I feel like it was meant to happen, because that was the day that it changed my life. And
that's great.
I not only was like, the earth's definitely flat, but God is totally real. And I thought, maybe if I try to come at people with the Bible, they would believe it more. And I don't know. Some people, they're like, my version says this. And it's hard.
And that's the thing. And again, I'm not in business to tell people what to do, but, it goes back to the, every time that you transcript something, or what's the word I'm looking for? Every time you, if you go to NIV or something else, every time something is transcribed, it loses meaning. And, whether it's intentional or not, people have an agenda, right? Well, people can't understand these words, so I'm just going to use this. But again, every time you translate something, it loses meaning. That's why, two things that I've learned to do since I became a flat earther is King James Version Bible, but I also use Strong's Concordance. If there's a word I don't understand, I copy and paste it and put it in there, and it gives you either the Hebrew or Greek meaning of the word, and then it makes, if anything, it's made me a better Bible reader.
Yeah, and I tell people there's way more than just the firmament in the Bible that shows that we're on a level plane. Like he watches us above like we're grasshoppers, the four corners of the earth, and it never says that we're spinning and ever expanding.
Yep. Was it Job 37:10 says the waters are straight, not curved. It's out there. And again, everything. And the more you get into this realm, and I'm sure you've experienced it over the last 3 years since you've kind of dove into the conspiracy realm, you understand that almost everything at best is a little bit of truth sprinkled with a lot of lies.
Yeah, and I tell people, like, it's once you start just forgetting everything and starting over, I mean, there's so much you can get into. Like, I started going live on TikTok, and we were talking one night on live about dinosaurs maybe not being real and the earth being flat, and they suspended me from going live for hate speech.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was super weird, but I got an appeal and they gave me my live status back. So there's actually a lot of information on TikTok.
There is 100%. There really is. That's interesting. And it's crazy. You see some of the people who do things on TikTok, but if you try to talk about God or flat Earth or anything like that, you get that they try to strip that away from you. That should tell you something.
Yeah, and they'll make it so some of my videos are like limited access because I said something about like his story is written by the winners and it's his story. And they said something like they believe in everyone being able to have their own opinions unless it's these things that are actually not even close to being true.
So basically,
and I was like, that's
going back to the old fact checker stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's something. Now,
and I've gotten really into Yandex because of your show too. I always tell people, if you want to figure out if something's true, go to Google and then go to Yandex and compare it.
It's not even close. And I just interviewed someone last night. He had mentioned that he had been introduced to the flat Earth, and he went to, of all places, Google. And sure enough, every single thing was how ridiculous the flat Earth was. So he actually stopped looking, and through God's works, he came back to it again like a year later, and he did use an alternate search engine, and he started to realize the lie and all of these things. You really have to, and that's a sad state. We talk about how awesome technology is, but at the same time, like in your case, you have to like be careful of what you say on TikTok, or you could lose your platform. Or searching for things. It's just a shame that we have to go out of our way to special search engines to find the truth, and that really just goes to show how controlled everything is. And that, if the biggest search engine in the world is controlled, then maybe that should get people to understand NASA, how that's controlled, and everything else, how the world works. It's controlled by the same few organizations, BlackRock, Vanguard, etc.
Oh yeah, and I tell people all the time, like, if you don't believe the moon landing was true, then why would you believe anything else that they've ever said? Like, there's so much evidence to debunk that space is not even close to what they say it is, and we didn't go to the moon.
Yeah, and anybody who does, just a little bit of research will quickly understand that we never went to the moon, just by debunking the basic things. And that goes to exactly what you just said, Jordan. If they lied about man's greatest accomplishment, you have to assume that they're lying about everything else.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but I feel like there's also, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I don't know if it was on here or I heard it somewhere else, but, people will be like, they don't trust the government, but then the government releases some file that says aliens are real, and they're like, oh, aliens are real. It's like, so we pick and choose what we believe from the government? That makes it hard too.
It does. But I tell people, whether it's an acquaintance or whatever, if you consider somebody a friend and they continue to lie to you and let you down, would you continue to befriend them, or would you kind of stay away from them if they continually lie, right? If your neighbor comes over and lies and, nonstop about things, you're eventually going to be like, hey, Joe, listen, we'll be neighbors and we'll wave, but, I just don't have the time because you're lying all the time. And this is where you got to give credit to, the people who have created this matrix and I said it on the other podcast 2 years ago, right? People were hip to Trump, to warp speed, right? You're a flat earther, but he did Space Force and all these other things, and people were kind of waking up to the left-right paradigm scheme. But I said, watch, come November of 2024, people are going to slowly gravitate back to the hopium. And so many people did. And we're only 2 weeks after the election, and every person he has nominated is swamp monsters. And again, it's the system. The system that is created by man will continue to fail you if you believe in it, if you trust in it, if you involved in it, right? You are of this world, but don't be in this world.
Yeah, and I just did an episode on my podcast about how the United States when it was formed and became a corporation. And the government's all been like a big scam since way before I was born. And that's why I'm trying to tell my parents this. They don't want to believe that, because I mean, that's a lot more years than me of being lied to.
Man, that's great stuff. And I want to come back to, because I still have your silver bullets and other things I want to ask you. But could we jump into that for a few minutes? Because that's something I've looked into. There's, birth certificates. Was it the Organic Act of 1871, the Reconstruction period, when basically, our country became a corporation? Can you speak on that for a few minutes?
Yeah. I think I got it right here. I found this PDF document, and it's awesome. Like this guy breaks it down from like when it let me find my bookmarks.
Was that the guy on YouTube from like 10, 15 years ago who does the speech, the lecture?
No, because all I found was a PDF.
Oh, okay.
And where is it? Oh, here we go. Nope. Oops. Oh, nope, wrong one. Let me figure out where I put it. Sorry, I just got all these windows open on my computer.
You're good.
Nope, that's not it either. I'm pretty sure it was in 18. I shouldn't have deleted closed all my tabs. That was a bad idea. Maybe I'm not going to be able to find it. That would stink. Or here. Maybe this is it. I should have been a little more prepared.
Yeah,
because the PDF, it's like 170 some pages. So I'm gonna have to do it in like 4 different episodes. Okay, yeah, Everything You Know About the United States and Its Law is Wrong, by John Henry Hill, and he wrote it in April 26, 2013. He breaks down like common law, contract law, admiralty law, definitions, and like how they use legalese. And like I got a Black's Law Dictionary app on my phone just to kind of show people, like they say that human being means monster. And the certain ways you talk in court, like shall, if they say shall, that means like you may or may not do something. You're not obligated. You have a choice.
So similar to
and he cites it with all the laws. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just saying similar to what Jordan Maxwell says.
Oh, yeah. Because I put some of Jordan Maxwell's videos in that episode too, because I first heard him on your, was it The Fact Hunter, when he breaks down the admiralty law and how it's like riverbanks and you go to court.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. And because the first part of that episode was just pretty much trying to say that, you don't have to have a driver's license to travel on the road. And I haven't tried doing any of that yet, just because I see a lot of videos on TikTok, and most of them, they do have to go to jail sometimes, and then they'll sue them. But I'm not at a point in my life where I can just go to jail and then try to sue the police.
And that is the thing. I have listeners. I have people on the podcast who have done that. They've said they haven't gotten tags, their registration renewed, don't have a license, haven't paid taxes. And again, it's up to the individual. Everybody's at a different point in their life to where, just like if you believe the official story about the founding fathers, right, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they were all considered traitors, right? And So that's how the government would see us, right? Well, you don't want to play our game, then we're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah. They've had so many years. I mean, when they started doing all this and they created like the Uniform Commercial Code and all the statutes, like technically we shouldn't have to listen to any of that because we're not in Washington, D.C. and I don't want to be part of their corporation. It wasn't my choice to get a birth certificate.
Yeah, I think Washington, D.C., is it like a 10 square mile city in itself?
Yeah. And I've heard people say that like it's DC is like the military version, and then London is
the banks,
the banks, and then the Vatican's
religious,
the church.
Yeah. Yes.
And I didn't know that they all had their own little areas. Like they're not part of where they are. Like I've learned a lot, and people think it's depressing, but I think it's awesome. I love learning stuff and trying to go towards what I think is the actual truth.
Yeah, I think it's intriguing and freeing at the same time. The thing with John Henry Hill, and there have been many other people who have put out this type of information, is it's the minutia of it, and you have to be very disciplined and read it because this document, what is it, 106 pages long?
108 pages long. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. And it talks about one thing that is true, and I've heard many times, is transportation, right? That's supposed to be defined as the movement of goods engaged in commerce, right? So that's the whole thing. If we're just driving to work or driving to school, we're not engaged in commerce. Why are we having to pay for these things?
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to give your ID for like, they can't walk up to you and just say, hey, give me your ID. Like there's a lot of things I just feel like we have basic rights that they don't listen to us.
Yeah. Most of the Americans are good people, and we've become a little too laissez-faire, I think. If you go back to the Christians of the 1600s, they didn't play. They made laws based on the Bible. They didn't do random laws. And if there was something that was done that someone needed to be accountable for, they dealt with it and they moved on. Here, and again, I'm not condoning, this isn't about prisoner rights or anything like that. I'm not standing up and defending bad people. But when you have someone who is 19 years old makes a mistake, and they have what this current system does, it puts them in debt even more, legal fees, fines, these type of things. In the Bible, we're supposed to, and again, this is all these things, the entire system, it's a very delicate thing to talk about, but we do need wholesale change in this country. People complain about it. Well, then what's the answer? What do we do? I did an entire podcast on the prison industrial complex in Texas. I think 60 or 70% of those prisons are private. And guess what? If they fall under like 90% capacity, they lose contract incentives. So you think about that is really nuts. It benefits corporations to keep people in prison.
Yeah. And actually, it's crazy that you said that, because the place that I work at now and the place that I worked at before this, there's a prison, a small one out here, and they actually both had prisoners from that prison come there, and they were a private industry. And that's when I actually learned that if you have a job and you're in prison, you got to pay rent to be in prison. And I learned a lot from those inmates. And yeah, they said that if they get under a certain amount of people there, then that prison will get shut down. So they got to keep it stocked.
That's a true statement. And, I can give you 1,000 cases of judges who've been corrupted. And again, we've just built a system that benefits the government. It governments the bankers and the people, we, the people, if you will, are usually the ones who come in last place when it comes to benefits, right?
Yeah. Because isn't that the whole point of the Second Amendment, is that why we can have guns is if we need to overthrow the government?
Right. Well, Joe Average on the street will tell you it's to go hunting. They don't really understand why
Yeah.
they created that. They realized, what's the famous saying? If the government fears you, there'll be peace. But if you fear the government, you're looking at some bad times.
Yeah, and I hear you say that the Constitution's not, it doesn't work anymore, and I feel like, yeah, every day it is becoming like it's irrelevant.
Right. They'll cite it. You know, the politicians will be more than happy to cite, look, you're free. This paper says so. But that's like, you know, buying a car and here's your warranty. You're covered for 3 months, you know, for 3 years. And then something happens and you go back, say, hey, look, you know, the transmission is shot. And oh, no, if you look down here, there's a little asterisk says if, you know, that part in particular is not covered, which you could kind of correlate to. You see the Patriot Act here. That's why we're allowed to shut down your habeas corpus.
Yeah, but if you don't pay your bill, we'll come get it because it's really still our car. We always own it.
Exactly. And same with property taxes, right? Yeah, you pay it off your house and you see people burn their mortgage papers, but you still have to pay tax. You know, that's what the Matrix is all about, continuously draining you to keep you busy, to keep you working, to keep you away from the important things, right? I think God created this world for us to enjoy, to exist with each other, to try to make each other better people. Instead, you know, what man has done is very few people at the top with extreme greed, corruption, and power. They start wars because the bankers make so much, and they believe there should only be X amount of people living on Earth. See, you know, the Georgia Guidestones rule number 1, and we buy into all that stuff. And again, a lot of that is on us.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I don't know if this is a side track, but I seen a video today and I didn't know it was Donald Trump's daughter, but her name's Laura Trump, I think.
Yes.
And she was on some talk show saying that the earth was flat.
Really?
Yeah. Because I had to ask my parents if they knew who it was. And they're like, that's Donald Trump's daughter from like his first marriage. And I was like, what? I can send you the video.
Yeah, please do, because last I heard, her father was the one who created Space Force.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's interesting.
And he's got Elon Musk there, and Elon Musk, he doesn't believe. He thinks that it's full of liquid hot magma, because I seen a video right after that when Joe Rogan asked him if he gave any thought to the flat earth, and he just laughed. But I feel like it's becoming more, people talk about it more, because they had a thing on Family Feud. Like, what would you do if you were on a date and your date told you the earth is flat? And the number one answer was agree with them.
Really?
Yeah.
That is interesting, because I think we're obviously making progress getting the message out. But what will happen eventually, once not everyone, but when a large portion of people finally understand the world is flat, what they will do is another psychological operation. They'll either say, well, you know, this is flat, and then they'll put the spin on it. Or they may even, if, you know, too many people wake up. But I don't think they care anymore. I don't think they really do, because they know we may talk about it, but they know we're docile and we're not going to, you know, we're not going to really do anything about it. NASA will continue to get their 70 million a day, or maybe if they feel threatened, they'll pull a Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, and I mean, that's when you say docile, that just always makes me think of, like, I recently quit using deodorant at all. I just use like alcohol and some essential oils, and I don't use fluoride in my toothpaste because that makes you docile, and I don't want to be controlled by anything anymore. Like, there's all the radiation and EMF from everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been off fluoride for many years, and then we got off the deodorant. But we do, I think my wife orders it from, I don't know if it's a homesteader or somebody. It's all natural, no aluminum or anything. And it's just a locally owned deodorant, but there's no aluminum or anything like that. And those things do matter. You do see things more clearly. We also pay attention to things like bioengineer food, which if you go down the cereal aisle, which has like the Pop-Tarts, the cereal, the granola bars, like every single one of those boxes has bioengineered things in them. It's just, I've said before, they're poisonous via the air with chemtrails, through the food, with water, with fluoride, vaccines. It's literally warfare against God's creation. And it's hard to get people to see otherwise. It does take, in some cases, these significant type of events for people to wake up, like COVID, right?
Yeah. And I mean, some people, they tell me that like, yeah, they didn't get the vaccine because they didn't trust it. But I don't know. I just try to get them to if you don't believe that, then you should try to look into this. Like I try to send people just little videos or stuff just to try to get them to maybe think about it.
That's the way it was for me. Like, I had Facebook, very few people, just mostly family, friends, just to say hi to them. And I'd post a picture of the chickens or, whatever, just little things. And then every now and then, if I really felt, something like maybe this, 45-second video, 2-minute video, just maybe, my friend who I went to high school with, he'll see that and he'll ask questions. And then, I look 2 days later and like not even one person liked it. So I'm just like, all right, well, and that's really, I think it speaks to the nature of people is they would rather see dancing chickens and, cat fails rather than take the time and look into their reality.
Yeah, because I used to ask people at work, like, I'll give you $100 right now if you can prove gravity. And this one guy, he would always just be like, he'd jump up and he'd come back down. And he's like, where's my money? And I was like, that doesn't prove anything to me. That means you're heavier than the air and you obviously can't float. So there's buoyancy and density.
I know as soon as you said that, he was going to jump up in the air. I did it. There you go.
Yeah. And I was like, that's not going to work. You can't prove gravity.
And that's where it's too bad you don't have, like a helium balloon. You just like if gravity can pull you down, why is this balloon allowed to float away? Why are the clouds just floating there? Why is this butterfly just floating aimlessly above it? We have been lied to. And again, I've said this before. It's like you don't discipline a child for the first 16 years of their life. And then all of a sudden you want to start laying the law down. Good luck.
Yeah. And I mean, don't they say like light as a cloud? But yeah. I seen clouds are like millions of pounds.
That's
and
right.
So that makes no sense that they can just float and stuff and they don't come down. And I mean, yeah, spinning the bucket with water. I remember seeing that. I try all these things, just like, if you believe it, then can you explain why this happens? But they can't.
They can't. And I wonder, I'm always thinking of stuff. I wonder if that's a psyop, because Google tells us that the weight of a cloud depends on its size, but a typical cumulus cloud weighs about 1.1 million pounds, or the equivalent of 100 elephants. So, I mean, if you use the science in their accounting, then there's no way the cloud should be up there. But again,
yeah, and that's what I tell people.
Exactly. But then it goes back to, how do they weigh a cloud? How do they know it weighs 1.1 million?
Yeah, like how can they tell the sun's 93 million miles away? How did they figure that math out? Because I say, no way. You can't tell me something's light years away, because I just don't believe that math. I think that's totally, they just make it up to fit their narrative.
Since we're kind of back down this road, do you want to lay out your 6 silver bullets?
Yeah, I got them right here, actually. I wanted to try to find the ones that were like the ones that really got me solidified. And the first one, which was was really hard for me to believe that it was be the one that got me in it, but it was the firmament and it being in the Bible. That was just 100%. That's like, if you believe in the Bible, then I don't know how you couldn't understand that. And my second is where I live in Kansas. They say Kansas is flatter than a pancake, which that already would be impossible on a globe. But they say the human's average line of sight's like 3 miles, but there's a town 12 miles away, and every single night you can see all the lights and everything. And I went and did the 8-inch per mile squared, and it said there should be 57 feet of curvature. So there'd be no way I could see that town, but you can see the town on to the other side of us, 8 miles away. And then there's some even farther than that, and you can see them too.
Yeah, and that's a blessing for you. There's a lot of people who live in New York City, Baltimore, Tampa. There's a thing called light pollution. And because you have such little light pollution, you are able to see the stars much clearer at night and able to see these locations further and further away.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can see that and there should be 57 feet of curve, then that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
And I'd say 3 is water always finds its level, and it's got to be in a container. And rivers, they shouldn't go north. And doesn't the Mississippi go north, like in a bunch of different spots?
I think the big one was it the Nile?
Okay, it is the Nile, yeah.
I'm fact checking myself in real time. Yes, the Nile River flows north from south to northeastern Africa. So, and of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson and his friends will come up with the reason why it does. He even did a video a couple weeks ago explaining why some field goal kicker on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers missed the field goal because the earth was spinning. I'm just like, what are we doing?
Oh, wow. Did he really say that?
Yeah, he really, I don't know if it was Tampa Bay, but somebody like hit the upright or missed a field goal, and he did a whole 3-minute video on gravity causing this team to lose the game.
But we can't take a helicopter straight up and just hang out and come back down at a different part of the world.
Exactly.
Wow. And then I'd say 4 is probably, you can't have pressurized gas without a container. And I looked where they said they try to explain it away with the atmosphere and all this other stuff, but I know there's a firmament, and that's how we have all the gases that we have here. And then I'd say 5 is the sun rays, because anytime I see the sun rays coming out of a cloud, and I'm like, how could it be 93 million miles away or whatever? And it literally just looks like it's right there. People take pictures of like on a plane, and you can just see like the sun floating there.
Yeah.
And I think that they're in the firmament.
Exactly. The crepuscular rays, I think they call them, is a huge, the way they come through the clouds. There's no way they would come through like that at 93 million miles.
Yeah. And then wouldn't it technically have been like light in space when they went to the moon?
Yeah, that's the other thing people talk about. If the sun is so bright, why is space dark, right?
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense to me.
None whatsoever.
And then I'd say 6 is probably just like flight past. And I mean, they call it an airplane. They don't adjust for curve. It's horizon, not curve horizon, sea level, not sea curve. I tell people, if you just look at the word, it kind of makes sense. Like they build construction level with the earth.
Yep, they use levels, and there's water bubbles, and that's what they use a level for.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other things, but those are probably the 6 that I would try to get people to have them think about it.
Now, I'm probably backtracking just a little bit, but when you first became aware and started diving deep into Flat Earth, were you like me? Were you excited, and did you figure like, I'm going to share this information with my friends and family, and they're going to be excited like I am?
Oh, actually, I couldn't wait, because my parents, they believe in the Bible. And I was like, I can't wait to tell them, because they knew that I didn't really mess with the Bible or anything. And I thought maybe, I can tell them what I found, and I can, have them see. And nope, that didn't work. And I've literally probably only found like a couple people in real life. I found a lot more people on TikTok, but a lot of people, like even people that have been my friends for years and years, they look down on me like I'm just not as smart as them.
Yeah, and I should say vice versa. We shouldn't, in the truth community. I'm not a big fan of looking down at people like I have the secret information that you don't know. I think, on both sides, the people who just believe the narrative, and for people like us who maybe, see things that other can't because they're too deep into the matrix, that there are some people out there who are divisive, calling, the normies and the sheeple and things like that. I think that can be more divisive than anything. I think we got to try a happy medium. But at the same time, it is frustrating because, I've had people both personally and on my other podcast when I first brought it up, I thought you were smarter than that, George. You've just discredited yourself, and they're like ashamed of you because you believe in this certain thing. And it's frustrating because we all have different journeys. We all have different eyes. We see different things. And some people see the top skin of the onion, and some people see the core of the onion. It just depends on how often people take the time to peel back the layers to understand what's really going on in this world.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had relationships where they're like, can we talk about something that's not conspiracies, or is that all you talk about? And if we go here, can you not bring up flat earth or anything conspiracy? And it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me not to. And I try to not push it on anybody, but I will give them information as long as they'll listen.
Yeah. And I'll be tested this week. Thursday's Thanksgiving, and we'll be sitting at the table, and something will eventually come up and I'll just have to bite my tongue, because once I get started, I can't stop. And then I'll see the eyes rolls and everything else. So we'll stick to, football and, the latest thing, whatever the latest thing is.
Yeah. And I mean, I've quit television. I don't really like movies, and I don't even really listen to music that much anymore. I just try to do research.
Yeah.
I love doing it.
It's funny you mentioned that, because prior to really get involved in this, we used to go to the movies like every other week, but that is back when they actually had decent movies too. Post 2020, there haven't been really a lot of good movies. Nevertheless, I think that's a common theme among truthers. You kind of distance yourself away from movies and television. And even me, I was a huge music guy. My very first podcast, 8 years ago, was a music podcast breaking down, the Power Station or Led Zeppelin 3 or something like that. And then, here I am today. I rarely listen to music because I'm just busy either reading or consuming audio or some type of video. And it is a passion, because, I don't want to live in that same system anymore. I want to learn the truth. And I think before all these amenities we have today with radio and then even the newspaper, if you go pre-1500s, before the printing machine came about, the 1480s, I think there's something to going to a local neighbors and everybody gathering together and communicating and talking. And as wonderful as technology is, it has distanced us to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I've been trying to get back into reading, because I got this book by Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
I think so. I like you. I have a bunch of books that I still have to catch up on.
Yeah, and I've got into the Book of Enoch and stuff.
Yeah. Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. Okay, so it's 20 years old. It's rather new. From 2005. But what's interesting? That book actually won the Goldman Sachs Business Book of the Year award. Oh wait, this never mind. This is
right.
Oh, wait a second. So they're saying that this book was based on globalization, suggesting the world has a level playing field as far as a global economy. Is this?
Did I get duped?
Well, I'm wondering if this is Wikipedia trying to dupe people. Yeah, okay. So the 10 Flatteners, collapse of the Berlin Wall, Netscape, uploading. Okay, so yeah, it's more about a world economy flattening the world that way. But they mock flat earthers because does your cover have like a ship going off the edge?
It's got a picture of a flat Earth on it. It looks like a coin with the Earth on it.
Okay. So this one is the original first edition cover. There you go.
Well, that stinks. Well, then I guess I probably won't be reading that book.
Yeah, that's there are books out there, and to me, if you look at the original cover, it looks like he's mocking flat earthers. There's a ship going over the edge, a la the Flat Earth Society.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's sad. I seen that at a thrift store, and I was like, okay, I'll buy that for $1.
Oh well, it talks about a lot of important historical things. It's funny, Netscape. That's something. Remember, you'd be checking out at Walmart and you could get the 1 month of internet service for like $20. You'd go home and put the little disk drive in. You'd have internet. It's crazy how far we've come in such a short period of time.
Yeah, I tell my kids, like, you have no clue what it was like when I was a kid, because we didn't have internet when I was like my son's age, and with the internet's down, he's like, well, what am I going to do? And it's like, really? What are you going to do if the internet's down? There's so much you can do.
Yep.
We had dial-up at first, and I thought the internet was crazy then. It's way crazy now.
It sure is. Yeah, back when I was growing up in the late 70s and 80s, our family, we had 20-year-old encyclopedias, or I'd have to go to the public library and try to figure out the Dewey Decimal System, and it's... And that's when really your mind was molded by the system. You didn't have alternative media like today, how, with a phone in the palm of your hand, you can stumble on something accidentally. It was much harder back then. And, I hear a lot of people online talking about how the boomers did this and did that. They didn't have the same technology they had today.
Yeah. And I feel like I sometimes I wonder if like the elites, or they're not elite, but the people in control, if they ever wonder, like, I think we let the internet get away from us because, yeah, they flooded with all sorts of information. And I feel like that's also so they can divide us, where people argue whether it's flat or round or Republican or Democrat. But if you look, there is information out there for,
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a good and a bad thing.
It's always a double-edged sword, and I do think not to bring the room down at all, but there is going to be a reset in a future dystopian society, whether it's our generation or two from now. There is going to be a social credit score coming in play, like it's already started in China, and you go to log on and you put your little thumbprint, which in the military, by the way, guys, when we logged onto our computers, and this is before I retired 10 years ago. You had to put a digital imprint to log onto the computer. And that's something, your social credit score is 580. Therefore, you cannot log on to the internet. If you'd like to log on the internet, we can delete your anti-government post that you posted at 8:32 p.m. last night. Would you like to delete the post? Okay. You are now able to access the internet.
Yeah. Or we've seen you research this on here.
Yeah.
This goes against our terms and service of being an American. So I'm so scared for that. I do not want that to happen, but I feel like it's honestly, unless everybody in America decided that we can do this, but that's why I try to just spread as much as I can, and hopefully maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I often go back to, well, did we pass the COVID test as a whole?
I think we'd do better if they tried to do it again, but there's still, I see people on TikTok that are still just like, they are full on. They'll get vaccinated again if they have to 10 more times.
Yeah, sadly, I believe that as well. Have you, with your children, have you talked to them about this, and where do they sit on it with flat Earth?
Actually, yeah. My oldest daughter, she is 11, and her stepdad, she told me he actually thinks the Earth's flat too, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty crazy. You know, that's cool." And she knows that's what I think. And my son, he definitely knows that's what I think. He's my little intro on my podcast. I ask him if the Earth's round or flat, and he says it's flat.
Nice.
And then I asked him why, and he said the firmament. And I was like, "What's the firmament?" And he's like, "Do you even read the Bible, bro?" And
that's awesome.
My youngest daughter, she's only 5, but she doesn't understand it yet. But each of my kids, they have their own mom, and it's kind of hard to. Some of them are like, "Can you not talk to them about that?" Because they think they'll get made fun of at school, or my dad's a flat earther, and I don't want him to get made fun of by any means, but I'm not going to lie to him either.
Yeah, and that is something that even as people enter the truth realm, as we're closing in on Christmas, that's another thing that people deal with, right? Should we be deceiving our children at all? But that's, I don't want to get into that in the podcast in case little Johnny and Jenny's in the car right now listening. I leave that up to the parents to decide, because we are in many ways traditionalists, right? And I've gone down the truth road for many years now, and you start to realize that many of these holidays are based on on paganism, right? And on the outside they seem awesome.
Oh yeah.
But if you peel back the layers, you realize that there are some not so great things about these particular things, which, I'm not going to get into right now. I think most people know what we're talking about. But at the same time, you are a traditionalist. I remember growing up and on December 25th, getting up and going down the stairs, seeing the presents under the tree, and told that, old jolly Saint Nick brought them. But there is a fine line, because you realize this is the same people who told you, when you're a baby in the crib and there's the planets above you, the little, there's Mars and the moon. All the kids have those things on the ceiling growing up, and you realize that is a farce too. You wonder, should we be instilling these things in our children's mind at all? But that, it's not as easy as it sounds, especially for people who have children and grandchildren, right?
Yeah, because with my kids growing up, like, they love dinosaurs, and it's like, man, if I start telling them that I don't think dinosaurs are real, that's going to hurt their feelings kind of, because like you said, when they grow up, they have those little planets spinning above the crib, and I think we actually had one with dinosaurs on it, and then my kids still have dinosaur pajamas and stuff, and I loved dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and I watched these space movies, and I was always like, that'd be so crazy, like doing a spacewalk, and now I'm just like, that's so dumb. Like, that's why I can't watch it anymore, because it's just like, it's not realistic.
And that is something that we have to face as parents, right? Because I remember in whatever, I think it was 1977, so excited going to the movie theater and seeing the very first Star Wars. And then, we got the action figures and the X-Wing fighters, and because we didn't have internet, we didn't have video games. We maybe had Pong or Atari 2600, but that kept our interest for 10 minutes. So that's what you did. You rode your bike and you imagine, right? You G.I. Joe or whatever it was, and you pretended you were in outer space. You were a hero, right? Blowing up whatever that big ball was. I forget what it's called. The Death Star, right? And It seems innocent from a parent's point of view, but when you grow up and realize the Earth is flat and space doesn't exist, you understand that it's not just entertainment, it's propaganda.
Yeah, and they are so good at the propaganda, because I feel like with kids, I know kids that are in like 3rd, 4th grade, and they don't know how to ride a bike because they're never outside. They're inside. They are on electronics all the time. And I told my son today, like, that video you're watching is so weird. Like, the stuff kids watch now is not even what I watched when I was kids. Like, I feel like the stuff they put in programs for the kids to watch it's not good either.
Yeah, even
I don't want to take away all their
right
everything that's fun, you know.
Exactly. It's a tough world to navigate, right? But at the end of the day, truth must prevail, and that's why I'm glad that you're out here promoting Once Upon a 785 podcast. And once again, tell us a little bit about it, where to find it. Which again, I'll have the link in the show notes. But do a little self promotion for a moment.
It is Once Upon a 785. Pretty much all the episodes that I have before. I think my season finale for my first podcast is I actually worked at a place in Heston, Kansas, and it was a lawnmower plant. I don't know. It was on the national news. Some guy came in with an assault rifle and a pistol and just started opening fire on everybody. And I was at work that day. And so that's my season 1 finale, the craziest day I ever had working at Excel Industries.
Wow.
And after that's when all of it's, I start with like Flat Earth, the Firmament, the Antarctic Treaty, Richard Byrd, and the Ice Wall. I do Antarctica deep dives, and then High Jump, Paperclip, NASA, and how they started with like their occult origins, and Fishbowl, the mission hoax, and then have you ever heard of the Stoll, Kansas, and how it's supposed to be one of the 7 gateways to hell?
No, I don't think I have. Is that STULL?
STULL, yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's
like a little town over by Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay, that's where UK is. Why is what's the theory why that's a gateway to hell?
It was from back in like I think it got big in the 70s and 80s. People just started, there was like a news article that came out in Kansas City that said that it was one of the 7 gateways to hell and one of the 2 places where the devil chose to show himself on Halloween. And it was like Halloween in some like desert over in some other country. But there's supposed to be this church that was there, and something happened, and like the church had like a fire, and people would say that if it was raining there, you could go in the church and there wouldn't be any water on the floor, and that on Halloween you would see like a staircase going down, and you would go down, and that would be like the door to hell. And it got so big that like they had to start having the police come on Halloween because there'd be so many people at the Stoll graveyard waiting until midnight for the devil to come. And this one time they made everybody leave at 11:30. And it's like, if the devil wasn't coming, why'd you make him leave? Just weird stuff happened like that. And I think they're like unincorporated. So like if you have out of plate tags, the police will ask you to leave the town because they don't want like tourists and stuff.
Yeah, they are an unincorporated community in Douglas County, Kansas. Sorry, and it says the cemetery in Stoll is most known for a portal to hell that the devil allegedly comes twice a year. That's interesting. I'll have to do a little research into that. And it looks like it just came to popularity. But they mentioned something that it's also based on the Apocrypha, which is something that I need to find that link.
Oh, I didn't even read about the Apocrypha.
Yeah, it mentions it in there. But again, this is all new, so I'm going to have to take some time this week and see what I can find.
Because I thought they said that this was debunked, but this was also on Google. But I remember hearing that like the Pope wouldn't fly over Kansas because it was unholy ground. The Beatles wouldn't fly over Kansas because it was unholy ground. And yeah.
Well, Plum Research Center, which unleashed the Lyme disease, they shut down and they moved to your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I learned that from your podcast, and I was like, no way. That's where they did all the animal testing and stuff?
Yep.
Is that at Fort Riley?
No, it is in Manhattan.
Okay, yeah, Manhattan. And that's pretty crazy because I'm pretty sure I have a cousin that's a math professor at the Manhattan College.
that's where
But
Kansas
yeah, that's pretty
State
wild.
is, right? Kansas State.
Yep.
And so Homeland Security selected Kansas as the National Bio and Agro Defense Lab. And yeah, they just moved officially. They completed the move, I think, earlier this year or the end of last year.
And I feel like that's kind of sketchy and scary, I think, in my opinion. I don't want that here. And most of the people I know, when I ask them, they have no clue what it is or even why it matters.
Well, you know, yeah, the only good thing about it was on an island off the East Coast. Now they have it in the middle of the country. So, you know, if the next thing comes, you know, it could come out of the middle of the country. Lay low in your small land area there. Out in Collier.
Yeah.
Well, we're about out of time. This has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to listen to more of your podcasts. And I hope the listeners subscribe as well and check you out. I'll give you a few minutes for any final words you might have.
Yeah. If anybody wants, follow me on TikTok. My TikTok's Georgie, like Georgee, George with an extra E, 350. And I go live, and if people want to come on and talk conspiracies, we can do that. It just can't get too crazy or they'll shut my account down again. And yeah, check out my podcast, Once Upon a 785. If anybody wants to come on the podcast, I just recorded an episode with a guy from TikTok yesterday for like 3 hours, and it's fun.
Who did you have as a guest yesterday from
that's-
TikTok?
When I buy this, it doesn't sound like a book.
I met him from he was some random guy that came on my podcast. He's from Arizona, and we came instantly, like started hitting it off, and he's really cool. And I just met him last week. His name's Ryan.
That's pretty. You have over 5,000 followers. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I had only like 400 a month ago, and I kept started, and I had to get 1,000 to go live, and then once that happened, it just kind of blew up.
Okay, so it's like YouTube. You have to have 1,000 followers before you can go live.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, congratulations, and keep up the good work spreading the truth. And I'll have the TikTok email address and podcast. All those links will be in the show notes. You can either look again on the show notes on whatever podcast you listen to, or you can go to theflatearthfiles.com, and the blog post for this particular episode will have all that information on there as well. Jordan, thanks so much for being a guest. It's been a really great conversation. I learned a lot. Thanks so much for your time, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
All right. And thanks to the listeners for continuing to support the Flat Earth Files. I hope everybody has a great month. We're in December now by the time you hear this. So everybody have a wonderful December. God bless you. Keep your head on a swivel. And until we meet again, my friends, we will see you.
All right. And that's going to be the end of today's episode. I want to thank George for having me on the podcast. It was honestly a dream come true. And make sure everybody goes and listens to the Flat Earth Files and the Fact Hunter. They're both amazing podcasts. And if you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, and you don't mind, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating or a review. That helps me out a lot. But just know you don't have to do either of those things. I just want you to enjoy the show. Again, check out our affiliates and use promo code Georgie350 for some dope clothing. And don't forget, for $5 a month, you can watch the video before anyone else on patreon.com/onceupon785 or Spotify and just get the video version. My email is onceupon785@proton.me. You can catch me live on TikTok every week. And as always, I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's hit him with the outro.
Yeah. Middle of the map, can't swear I'm at. You can say I'm whack, it's just not a fact. Can't tell if I'm awake or I'm in a dream. I just know I'm geeked on amphetamines. Never was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend, now I am an addict. Never was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend.